The roar of the alien crowd was deafening, a chaotic symphony of guttural snarls, high-pitched trills, and bassy vibrations that rattled my chest like thunder. The Koran spectators, scaled, towering reptiles, with teeth that glinted under the arena's harsh lights, cheered for blood. Their champion, Commander Vractal, stepped forward, his steel, grey scales catching the light, his claws flexing in anticipation. I rolled my shoulders, letting my gaze sweep over the circular arena. It was a pit of hard-packed dirt that gleamed like shards of obsidian. No weapons, no armor, just flesh, bone, and grit. Across from me, Vractal let out a guttural laugh, the sound deep and mocking. So, the humans think their martial arts can match Corin's strength. His voice carried over the din, amplified by the arena's acoustics. You're not just weak, you're delusional. The crowd erupted in agreement, their laughter rumbling like an earthquake. I didn't rise to the bait. Words were meaningless here. Instead, I settled into my stance, feet shoulder-width apart, hands raised, loose but ready. My breathing slowed, each inhale deliberate, each exhale steadying my nerves. From the stands, Marcus Sledge Reed gave me a thumbs up, his ever-present grin visible even from a distance. Beside him, Dr. Kale Renick, the Velshar xenobiologist, who had become our unlikely ally, watched intently. His compound eyes glinted with something between curiosity and concern. "Ready, human?" Vractal snarled, his claws curling into the dirt. He didn't wait for an answer. With a roar, he changed. The Koran champion moved like a freight train, all brute force and momentum. He aimed to crush me outright, to end the fight before it even began. But speed without control was a weakness. I sidestepped at the last second, pivoting on my heel. Vractal's claws swiped through empty air, his massive frame barreling past me. As he stumbled to regain his footing, I darted forward, delivering a sharp kick to the side of his knee. The impact reverberated through my leg, and he let out a snarl of pain. The crowd's laughter turned to shocked murmurs. "First rule of combat," I said, circling him. "Never underestimate your opponent." Vractal's eyes narrowed, his lips peeling back to reveal rows of serrated teeth. "You'll regret that." For the next several minutes, the fight became a deadly dance. Vractal relied on his sheer size and strength, each strike powerful enough to pulverize bone. But his attacks were telegraphed, his movements predictable. I weaved and dodged, landing quick, precise strikes on vulnerable points. The soft tissue beneath his jaw, the joints of his shoulders, the nerve clusters Kale had taught me to exploit. Every hit I landed chipped away at his composure, and with it, his advantage. The crowd, once jeering, began to fall silent, their disbelief palpable. But Vractal wasn't done. With a roar, he surged forwards, faster than before. His claws lashed out in a flurry of strikes, and I barely managed to evade them. One swipe grazed my arm, tearing through the fabric of my shirt and leaving a shallow cut that stung like fire. "Enough games," Vractel bellowed, his voice raw with fury. "Fight me, human." I smirked, though my breathing was heavier now. "As you wish." I shifted tactics, meeting his aggression head-on. When he swung a massive fist, I ducked inside his guard, driving an elbow into his solar plexus. When he tried to grapple me, I twisted free, using his own weight against him to throw him off balance. The final blow came as he lunged forward, his jaws snapping dangerously close to my face. I dropped low, sweeping his legs out from under him. He crashed to the ground, and before he could rise, I was on him, my knee pressing into his chest, my fist poised inches from his throat. The crowd was silent now, their collective breath held. "Yield," I said, my voice calm but firm. "The fight is over." For a moment, Vractel's eyes blazed with defiance. Then, slowly, he raised a clawed hand in surrender. The arena erupted into chaos. Some cheered, others shouted in outrage. But all eyes were on me as I stepped back, offering Vractel my hand. He hesitated, his pride warring with his honor. Finally, he grasped my hand, and I pulled him to his feet. "You fight well," he admitted grudgingly, "for a human." "And you're tougher than you look," I replied, earning a bark of laughter from Marcus in the stands. Later, as I sat in the medical bay, Cale hovered over me, his mandibles clicking in disapproval, as he applied a strange alien salve to my arm. "You're reckless," he said, though there was a note of grudging respect in his voice. "You could have been killed." I shrugged. "You said it yourself. We humans are unpredictable." Cale tilted his head, his compound eyes reflecting the light. "Unpredictable, yes, but also remarkable." Marcus clapped me on the shoulder, his grin as wide as ever. "Told you, Cale. Never bet against a human." The halls of the Interstellar Warriors Guild were nothing like I expected. Massive pillars, carved from a black stone that seemed to drink the light, stretched upward into a cavernous ceiling lost in shadows. Alien banners hung between them, each marked with strange glyphs and vibrant colors that represented the species that had earned the right to stand among the galaxy's elite. The air was heavy, with an electric tension, a mix of sweat, ozone, and something distinctly alien that I couldn't place. It smelled like challenge. "Will you look at this place?" Marcus Sledge Reed whistled, his voice echoing in the stillness. He craned his neck to take it all in, his blonde hair catching the faint bioluminescent glow from the walls. "Feels like walking into Valhalla." "Focus," I said, though I couldn't entirely blame him for his awe. The guild wasn't just a monument to warriors. It was a testament to the countless battles fought across the galaxy. The weapons displayed in niches across the walls, even the scuffed floors, told stories of triumph and loss. Behind us, Dr. Cale Rennick's insectoid legs clicked against the stone as he kept pace, his compound eyes flicking from one relic to the next. "Impressive," he murmured, his voice a low hum. The architecture suggests at least 3 millennia of continuous use. Great, Marcus muttered. Let's just hope they don't throw us out for being new kids on the block. They invited us, I reminded him. They want to see what humanity's made of. They want a show, Marcus countered, cracking his knuckles, and I'm ready to give them one. We reached the central chamber, a massive circular arena sunk into the floor. Alien figures stood in the tiers above, their shapes silhouetted against the strange, shifting lights that illuminated the room. Some were familiar: the reptilian Koran, the insectoid Velshar, but others were unlike anything I'd seen before. A towering, crystalline being that glimmered with internal light. A 6-limbed predator, covered in sleek, jet-black fur. A humanoid figure with glowing, bioluminescent patches that pulsed in hypnotic rhythms. "Welcome, humans," a voice boomed. The speaker emerged from the shadows, a towering figure clad in shimmering armor that seemed to ripple like liquid. His skin was a deep blue, marked with intricate golden patterns that shifted as he moved. 2 horns curved back from his brow, giving him an air of regal authority. "I am Korvac, arbiter of the guild," he said, his voice resonating with the weight of centuries. "You have been invited to prove yourselves, to join the ranks of the galaxy's greatest warriors, or to leave in disgrace." "No pressure," Marcus muttered under his breath. The trials began immediately. The first challenge was a simple combat drill. Simple for the guild's veterans, at least. Each competitor faced off against a training drone, a sleek, spherical machine equipped with an array of weapons and adaptive AI. Marcus was up first. He grinned as he stepped into the arena, rolling his shoulders. "Watch this," he called over his shoulder. The drone activated, its surface rippling as it deployed an array of spinning blades and energy shields. It hovered towards Marcus with an ominous hum. Marcus charged, his movements raw but powerful. His first punch sent the drone skidding across the arena, its shields flickering under the impact. He pressed the attack, delivering a flurry of blows that left the drone scrambling to recalibrate. But as the fight wore on, the drone began to adapt. It shifted its tactics, its movements becoming faster, more unpredictable. Marcus's strikes grew wilder, less controlled. A sudden blast from the drone's energy cannon sent him sprawling. "Damn it," he growled, pushing himself to his feet. "Use your head, Sledge!" I shouted from the sidelines. Marcus paused, his breath heavy, and then nodded. When the drone charged again, he sidestepped, instead of meeting it head-on. He waited, baiting the drone into overextending, before delivering a precise kick that sent it crashing into the wall. The crowd murmured in approval, their alien voices a strange chorus. My turn came next. The drone hummed to life, its weapons gleaming under the lights. I took a deep breath, centering myself. This wasn't about strength. It was about precision. When the drone attacked, I moved, not with Marcus's brute force, but with calculated grace. I dodged its strikes, letting its momentum work against it. When I struck, it was with purpose. A sharp jab to its sensor array, a sweep to its stabilizers. The fight ended quickly, the drone sputtering as it collapsed to the ground. "Not bad," Marcus said, as I rejoined him, but I still hit harder. The next challenge was where things got interesting. The guild's champions stepped forward, their forms as varied as the galaxy itself. Each was a master of their species' unique combat style, and each was eager to test the newcomers. Marcus faced a Velshar warrior, its 6 limbs moving in a blur as it struck with razor-sharp precision. He struggled at first, overwhelmed by its speed and agility. But as the fight wore on, he began to adapt, using his size and strength to pin the Velshar against the arena wall and deliver a decisive blow. My opponent was a bioluminescent fighter from the Dralnari, its glowing patches pulsing in mesmerizing patterns. It moved like liquid, its strikes flowing seamlessly from one to the next. I quickly realized its strategy. The glowing patterns were meant to distract, to disrupt my focus. I closed my eyes, relying on my other senses to track its movements. The fight became a rhythm, a dance of strikes and counters. When I finally landed a clean hit, a sharp elbow to its midsection, it let out a trilling cry and withdrew, signaling its surrender. By the end of the trials, the air was thick with tension. Korvac stepped forward, his golden markings glowing faintly in the dim light. "You have proven yourselves," he said, his voice heavy with meaning. "But strength alone does not earn a place in the guild. You must demonstrate more." He gestured, and a final challenge was revealed. A team match. Marcus and I would face 2 of the guild's champions, a Corran brute and a crystalline fighter whose body refracted the light like a prism. As the fight began, it was clear we were outmatched. The Corran's strength was overwhelming, and the crystalline fighter's attacks came in dazzling, unpredictable arcs. But we had something they didn't: teamwork. Marcus kept the Corran occupied, using his raw power to match its strikes, while I focused on the crystalline fighter. Kale's earlier observations came to mind. The crystalline species was vulnerable at its joints, where the light didn't reach. I targeted those weak points, each strike chipping away at its defenses. When Marcus finally landed a bone-shaking punch that sent the Corran sprawling, we turned our combined efforts on the crystalline fighter. It fought valiantly, but the outcome was inevitable. The arena fell silent as Korvac raised his hand. "Enough," he said. "You have proven yourselves worthy." The crowd erupted into cheers and roars, the sound a cacophony of approval. Marcus grinned, his face flushed with exertion. "Told you we'd make it." The air in the diplomatic hall was thick with tension. Beneath the glittering chandeliers, representatives from dozens of species murmured and gestured to one another, their faces a mixture of skepticism and interest. I stood at the center of the room, a faint buzz of anxiety prickling at the back of my neck. Humanity's rise to the galactic stage had been meteoric, and not everyone welcomed us with open arms. My role here was to ensure Earth's growing influence wasn't crushed by old alliances and hidden grudges. "Do you sense it, Ethan?" Kale Renick's voice was a low, steady hum in my earpiece. Somewhere among the throng, my Velshar ally was monitoring the crowd. his compound eyes able to track movements that human eyes would miss. "Sense what?" I replied softly, keeping my face neutral. "Hostility," he said. "It's concentrated. Be careful." I scanned the room as unobtrusively as possible. Marcus stood by the entrance, his broad shoulders tense, his gaze sweeping over the delegates. His presence was a comfort, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Still, something felt off. The first sign of trouble came during the toast. A Reichel envoy, his tusked face set in a permanent sneer, raised a glass to the resilience of newcomers. The words were polite, but the tone dripped with disdain. "Careful," Marcus muttered as he sidled up to me. "These guys aren't exactly rolling out the welcome mat." "I noticed," I said, keeping my expression calm. The Reichel took a sip from his glass, then turned his gaze directly towards me. "Tell me, human," he said, his voice loud enough to carry over the crowd. "Do you really think your kind belongs here, among the stars?" The room fell silent. I smiled tightly. "We're here, aren't we?" His laugh was a low rumble. "For now." It happened just after the banquet ended. The hallways leading out of the diplomatic chamber were dimly lit, their polished metal walls reflecting fragmented images of the delegates as they departed. Marcus had gone ahead to check on our transport, leaving me alone with Cale. "Something feels wrong," Cale said, his antenna twitching. "You think?" I replied, keeping my tone light, even as my instinct screamed at me to stay alert. The attack came without warning. A shadow detached itself from the ceiling, moving with an inhuman speed. I barely had time to react as the figure lunged at me, a blade glinting in the dim light. I twisted to the side, the blade grazing my shoulder instead of piercing my chest. Pain flared, hot and sharp, but I didn't let it slow me down. Cale shouted something in Velshar as he sprang forward, his claws slashing at the attacker. The figure dodged, retreating with an almost serpentine grace. I got my first good look at my assailant, tall, lithe, and wrapped in a black bodysuit that shimmered like oil. Their face was hidden behind a sleek helmet, but the glint of reptilian eyes behind the visor told me enough. Corin. "Vractal sends his regards," the figure hissed, their voice distorted by a modulator. I didn't hesitate. "Cale, cover me." The Velshar lunged again, his serrated claws flashing as I circled around the attacker. The Corin was fast, but they weren't used to fighting two opponents at once. While Cale kept them occupied, I darted in and delivered a sharp kick to the back of their knee. The Corin stumbled, and I seized the moment. My elbow connected with their helmet, cracking the visor. They hissed in pain, but before I could land another blow, they twisted free and hurled a small device at our feet. Smoke exploded around us, acrid and blinding. By the time it cleared, the attacker was gone. "Vractal," Marcus growled when I relayed what had happened. We were back at our headquarters, Cale meticulously cleaning the wound on my shoulder, while Marcus paced the room like a caged animal. "It makes sense," Kale said. "It makes sense," Kale said, his voice thoughtful. "Vractel has the motive. He would lose considerable influence if humanity continues to rise." "But why attack me directly?" I asked, wincing as Kale applied a stinging antiseptic. "To send a message," Kale replied, "and to ensure you're too distracted to uncover the larger plot." I frowned. "Larger plot?" Kale's antenna twitched. "It's no coincidence. This attack happened here, at the diplomatic summit. Someone wants to discredit humanity, to make you seem weak and unworthy of trust." "That someone," Marcus said, "is Vractel. I'll bet my next paycheck on it." The truth came to light the next day. Kale, using his connections within the Velshar intelligence network, uncovered a conspiracy that spanned multiple species. Anti-human factions, united by fear of Earth's rapid ascent, had orchestrated a plan to humiliate us on the galactic stage. Their weapon of choice? The upcoming Grand Tournament. "It's a high-profile event," Kale explained, as we gathered in our headquarters. "Broadcast across the galaxy. The perfect opportunity to destroy your reputation." "And let me guess," Marcus said, "they've got ringers in the competition." Kale nodded. "Vractel is almost certainly among them." "Good," I said, my jaw tightening. "Then we'll fight, and we'll win." The tournament was held in a colossal arena, its architecture blending the styles of dozens of species. Thousands of spectators filled their seats, their voices a cacophony of excitement and anticipation. Marcus and I stood in the preparation area, our names freshly added to the roster. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked, his grin equal parts excitement and nerves. "Always," I replied, though my thoughts were racing. This wasn't just about survival. It was about proving humanity's worth. The first round was a gauntlet. Marcus faced off against a hulking Rykel warrior, their battle a clash of brute strength. Marcus held his own, his agility allowing him to dodge the Rykel's massive strikes. When he finally landed a punch that sent the Rykel crashing to the ground, the crowd erupted in cheers. My opponent was a Dralnari fighter, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in disorienting rhythms. I remembered my training, focusing on their movements instead of the distractions. A well-timed counterattack left them sprawling, their lights dimming in defeat. As the rounds progressed, the challenges grew more intense. We faced opponents with telepathic abilities, others who could manipulate the environment itself. Each fight tested our limits, but Marcus and I adapted, using our training and ingenuity to outmatch even the most unconventional tactics. The final round was inevitable. The arena was unlike anything I'd ever seen, carved into the surface of a moon orbiting a blazing blue star. It was the galaxy's most famous stage for combat. The Colosseum of Orion Delta stretched for miles, its stands filled with billions of spectators, both present in the flesh and connected virtually from across the galaxy. From my vantage point, I could see towering holograms, displaying my face and the face of my opponent. My image showed me standing stoic, a man against the odds. Vractel's hologram loomed like a nightmare. his sharp-toothed grin a promise of destruction. The roars of the crowd thundered like a storm. The announcer's voice echoed, his words carrying the weight of history. For the title of Supreme Champion and the fate of humanity's honor, Ethan Cross versus Commander Vrachtel. I took a deep breath, flexing my fingers. My entire body buzzed with adrenaline, every nerve on edge. I looked over my shoulder at Marcus and Kale, who stood just beyond the arena's threshold. "You've got this," Marcus said, clapping me on the back. His grin was as confident as ever, but his eyes betrayed his worry. Kale's mandibles clicked softly. "Remember everything we discussed. Vrachtel will anticipate your strategies. You must anticipate his anticipation." "No pressure," I said, offering a tight smile. Kale tilted his head, his compound eyes reflecting the blazing light. "All of humanity is watching, Ethan. None of us can afford failure." "Yeah, thanks for that," I muttered. The arena gates began to rise, the heavy grind of ancient machinery echoing through the chamber. With one last glance at Marcus and Kale, I stepped forward, the weight of the galaxy on my shoulders. Vrachtel was already in the center of the arena, his massive form illuminated by the harsh light of the sun above. His steel-grey scales gleamed like armor, his golden eyes locked onto mine with predatory intensity. "Welcome, human," he called, his voice carrying over the roar of the crowd. "I've been waiting for this moment." "Good to see you too," I replied, keeping my tone calm. Vrachtel let out a low, rumbling laugh. "You've impressed many, Cross, but this ends here. Today, I will prove that humanity is nothing more than a fleeting anomaly in the galaxy." "Let's see if you can back that up," I said, settling into my stance. The announcer's voice boomed once more. "Combatants, prepare. Begin." Vrachtel wasted no time. He surged forward with blinding speed, his claws slicing through the air. I barely dodged the first strike, the sheer force of his swing kicking up a gust of wind that stung my eyes. I countered with a quick jab to his midsection, but he twisted away, his movements fluid and controlled. He was faster than before, stronger. Every move he made was precise, calculated. "You've been training," I said, circling him. "You're not the only one who adapts," he replied, his lips curling into a grin. He attacked again, a flurry of strikes that left me scrambling to defend. Each blow came faster than the last, his claws narrowly missing my throat, my ribs, my legs. I managed to dodge and block, but it was clear this wasn't the same Vrachtel I had faced before. I needed to change my approach. Kale's voice echoed in my mind, a memory from our countless training sessions. Vrachtel's strength is also his weakness. He relies on his dominance to dictate the fight. Take that away from him. I shifted tactics, moving unpredictably. Instead of retreating, I advanced, weaving into his strikes and delivering quick, precise blows to his joints and pressure points. A sharp elbow to his wrist, a kick to the side of his knee. It wasn't about power, it was about control. For a moment, it worked. Vrachtel faltered, his rhythm disrupted. The crowd gasped as I landed a clean strike to his jaw. sending him stumbling back. But the reprieve was short-lived. With a roar, Bractel lunged, his claws raking across my chest. The impact sent me sprawling, the air knocked from my lungs. Pain flared through my ribs, but I rolled to my feet, forcing myself to stay upright. "You're resilient, I'll give you that," Bractel said, his voice tinged with amusement. "Comes with being human," I replied, wiping blood from my lip. We circled each other, the arena falling into a tense silence. The crowd watched, holding their collective breath as the battle reached its tipping point. Vractal feinted to the left, then struck from the right. I barely dodged, his claws grazing my shoulder. I countered with a low kick, aiming for his knee, but he anticipated the move, twisting away and slamming his tail into my side. The blow sent me crashing to the ground. Stars danced in my vision as I struggled to rise, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. "Stay down," Vractel growled, standing over me. "You've fought well, but this is over." I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to my feet. Not a chance. The final moments of the fight were a blur of motion and desperation. Vractel pressed his advantage, his strikes coming faster, harder. I dodged and blocked as best I could, each movement fueled by sheer determination. Then I saw my opening. As Vractel lunged, I sidestepped, grabbing his arm and using his momentum to throw him off balance. He stumbled, and I seized the moment, delivering a devastating roundhouse kick to his temple. He crashed to the ground, the arena shaking with the impact. I stood over him, breathing heavily, my fists raised. "Yield." For a long moment, Vractel didn't move. Then, slowly, he raised a clawed hand in surrender. The arena erupted into chaos. The crowd roared, their voices a deafening cacophony of cheers and shouts. The announcer's voice boomed over the noise, declaring me the victor. Marcus and Cale rushed into the field, their expressions a mix of relief and pride. "You did it," Marcus said, clapping me on the back. Cale's mandibles clicked softly. "You've secured humanity's place in the galaxy." Vractel rose to his feet, his movement slow and deliberate. He stared at me for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable. Then, to my surprise, he extended a clawed hand. "You've earned my respect, Cross," he said. I took his hand, shaking it firmly. "And you've earned mine." The tension between us eased, replaced by something fragile but promising. Understanding. As the crowd continued to cheer, I looked up at the towering holograms, my face illuminated against the stars. This wasn't just my victory, it was humanity's. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning.